Good evening, good evening, and good evening. A very, very warm welcome. And I have to say, I am very slightly nervous because I'm just about to introduce to you two really amazing spiritual giants. And I'm so excited and so happy that I've had this opportunity. Just about 10 minutes ago, somebody else was going to be doing this part of the presentation, but plans changed. And I'm sure tonight's topic is going to be about how many big changes we're going to be experiencing from the time that we just saw a few days ago, not only just a few days ago, but a few minutes ago, to the time that we're experiencing right now. So a real special welcome to everybody from abroad, and thank you for your presence, your love, and of course, God's blessings. So I know all of you are very eager to hear. I know all of you are very eager to hear tonight's talk. If I could just request, I'm actually hosting this as well as doing this master of ceremony, because we're just one man down. Tonight's talk is about a confluence of the Great Awakening. And there is no beautiful people, spiritual souls that I can introduce better than the spiritual giants in front of us, Sister Jayanti and Sister Jenna. Both do not need much introduction, I believe. Sister Jayanti is the additional head of the Brahma Kumaris, and she's also the director of the Brahma Kumaris Europe and the Middle East. Sister Jenna is the founder of the Meditation Museum in Washington. But what the most amazing thing I feel that I've received, and a lot of us, is just the divine light they do share. So without further ado, if I could request Sister Jenna to take the floor and perhaps introduce Sister Jayanti, and I'm happy to give the floor to you now, and so that you can move this program forward. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, and Om Shanti, and thank you for stepping in for the one man that's down. It's so good that we are 7.8 billion people on the planet. Anyway, welcome everyone, and please let me make some corrections here. The giant is Sister Jayanti, and I'm a little peapod here coming, because as I was sharing about her yesterday, we actually did a little interview for a book that's coming out on 2nd of February, entitled Meditation, Intimate Experiences with the Divine. I was introducing her to the individuals that were on that interview, and I said, look, if it wasn't for her presence, her consistency, the dedication, the courage, the way Sister Jayanti has moved throughout her whole spiritual journey, I don't think I'd even be here today to just see an example like her. So please, brother, I'm a little P and she's the giant. Sister Jayanti, Om Shanti, welcome. Nice to see you again. I think this might be our year together to spend a lot of time.
Well, it's good. Thank you, Jenna. I know you've done amazing things across the world. And so please don't call yourself a little P.
I'm a little P. I'm a little P. I love having all of my big sisters like you. Listen, everyone, you're going to see how humble she is. I mean, I can't begin to tell you the weight of depth of wisdom and compassion and purity that flows through her. And I could only try to get a few percentage of that. And I really mean that. But let's move on, because Jayanti Ben, a lot of people are really excited about me actually taking this time to go deep into you to find out what's been going on in that beautiful soul of yours, and to help them to find some tools about this great awakening. I mean, I remembered when we came into the Brahma Kumaris, we we were told about this energy of time called the confluence, this age between the dark and the light. And some of us maybe thought that it was a short period of time, and some of us, like yourself, have been on the journey for over 50 years. And I'm looking at now the pandemic, what we're witnessing for almost 2 years, a confluence happening within the world, within the world. Could you share with us, in terms of the confluence that you're witnessing in the world, what should people start to do now with the way that things are at this time? Because it is different. And the question is, are we coming with some different ideas and different thinking? So what would you recommend individuals should start to pay attention to as they participate in this global confluence that's taking place in their lives right now?
Let me put it into a little bit of a context first, before taking it onto individual responsibility, which is very much part of the story. I see how on the one side, there's the descending energy, the energy of darkness, and you can see it in terms of the values that our politicians have or don't have. You can see it in terms of the way people have reacted, almost with hysteria, to the pandemic, different responses, different ways. But it hasn't been a normal response. It has been quite hysterical in some ways. And then there's also the whole situation with climate change, and we wonder why things are the way they are, and we don't understand what our role has been to trigger all these horrific natural disasters that we keep seeing continually all the time. So you see the descending forces, the descending energy, but also there's this awakening that's happening, and people more and more aware of prayer, of God, of meditation, and wanting to find out about spirituality. And so this beautiful awakening that's happening is happening across the planet. And what I need to do for myself personally is just ask myself, what are my own inner core values? And probably when we go on that inner journey, then we may see that there's actually quite a discrepancy between those inner core values and what I'm doing in the world out there, how I show up in the world. And maybe that's the start of my journey, to say, well, how come there is this discrepancy? And what is it that I can do to align myself so that it truly is my core values that are being expressed in my life? No matter what else is going on around me, can I actually do that? And so I think that this is something that everybody can do. Spend just a few moments going inwards and just asking this question, well, what are my real core values?
That's sometimes not always easy to answer, because we don't spend a lot of time inside of ourselves, Sister Jayanti. And we're so distracted by social media, relationships, technology, the economy, health. And the fact that we're so removed from the real essence of the soul, how do we start to really tap into the soul to be able to even identify what are my core values?
Just to appreciate silence, time with myself. And it doesn't have to be hours, don't have to go to the Himalayas and sit on the mountains, but just even a few moments when I awaken. You know, there's that state in which it's like between sleep and wakefulness, and there's a different dimension that you're in at that moment. At that moment, can I say to myself, okay, let me have a few minutes, not just under the quilt, but just a few minutes to be with my inner world and just experience that inner state of calm, which actually is there within myself. And if I enjoy those moments or minutes of that experience, I'm drawn to be able to do that again and again. When you're waiting at the traffic lights for the lights to change, when you're waiting at the train station for the train to come, whatever it may be, but there's always those few moments when you're really alone, and you can take that as an opportunity to be alone with yourself. And yes, it's true that all the devices that technology has given us are amazing toys, but let me put aside those toys for a few moments and let me explore the beauty of the world within.
So let us go down the road a little bit as to the first time that you came into your spiritual awakening. I believe you were about maybe 19 years old. And I'm curious to find out if you can remember what was that switch that went on for you. We're approaching a day that's very sacred to the Brahma Kumaris community, which we both belong to. And the founder of the Brahma Kumaris, Prajapita Brahma, he had passed away on January 18th, 1969. And we're approaching that day where many of us around the world will be, going deep into silence to give our appreciation to how he has opened up our lives and have created the fortune for us to be noble citizens to society. But also the fact that you met him personally. And there must have been something in his presence that just switched you on, because I believe you were going down one of those other paths, and I was just curious to hear what was the switch that happened for you.
In fact, it happened a few months prior to, well, a few weeks prior to my actually going to Mount Abu. I'd met Brahma Baba through my childhood and my teenage years because my mother was a meditator. And so that was a wonderful door that opened for me and gave me that gift. But I was in India on a sabbatical. I decided to take a gap year from uni. And so I went to India on one level to enjoy India, because every time I'd gone before, I'd gone just for a very short visit with no time to actually explore anything of India. And so this time I was going with an open ticket and time enough to wander around and go here and there and see the history, the beauty, the story of India. And while I was in India that time, I think that shift began to happen gradually. But there came a point when I thought, I need to feed my mind. I've been enjoying everything here, but my brain seems a bit vacant. I need to feed it something. And my first thought was, I want to go to the Brahma Kumaris to see what they actually have to say, because I've never listened properly. I know the people, I love them, but I've never listened. So I went knocking on Daddy Janki's door, and one word she said opened something for me. And she said, conscience. She said, everybody's conscience seems to be asleep, and it's time to awaken the conscience. And the reason why the conscience has gone to sleep is because of so many external influences, media and society and education and peer pressure, all sorts of things. And she caught my attention. And I said, well, how do you do that? And she said, through meditation. And I began that same morning to study what is meditation. And so all this was happening. And within 6 weeks, I had the thought, this is the life I want to have. I told Daddy, and she said, well, you have to tell Brahma Baba. So I wrote a letter to him. Next morning, Baba didn't let the grass grow under his feet. Next morning, I got a telegram inviting me to Abu to come with Daddy Janki, who was going to go in early June. And when I was there, then it was a very lovely meeting with Brahma Baba. And he reminded me that he had actually predicted that this is what I would be doing, that I would become a spiritual teacher. And when he'd said that, I hadn't understood Hindi language. And even now, my Hindi was a bit rusty, but it was much better than it had been earlier. And then Baba asked me to come by at night, and a group of us were there, and it was a warm summer evening, and magic happened, and his gaze of soul consciousness and God's remembrance took me beyond the physical world to another dimension. And I knew that this was the moment of connecting with God. And in that experience of meditation, very powerful, it felt as if it lasted a long, long time. I don't know how much in earth time it was, but it felt infinite. And then when I came back down, then Baba looked around and asked the sisters who were there, including Daddy Janki, what do you think Baba was doing? And Daddy Janki understood absolutely. And it was as if Baba had carried me away from the past into a very different present and a new future. So it was like a death and a rebirth.
It was the great awakening of a confluence for you, wasn't it?
It was indeed.
And yeah, did you ever imagine that you would have been on the journey of serving humanity while you're transforming yourself for over 50 years?
I thought the changes in the world would happen very fast. I had no idea it would take me this long, or that the world was still going to carry on in the way that I see things are happening. I couldn't have predicted all this, no way.
You can imagine. Who would have thought that even you would have recognized that you had the internal strength to continue on a path of such discipline, commitment, courage, community, inclusion. So many things that you've been through. So as we continue to move through this global pandemic, and thank you so much for sharing that. It was very touching as well. Because as we're moving into Brahma Baba's days, I'm telling you, I can feel so much mysticism in the air. And for those of you who might not be aware of, Brahma Baba, I will invite you to really go onto the Brahma Kumaris site to get an update on just the legacy that he's left behind by the way he has empowered so many people. When people actually leave their bodies, they kind of try to take everything with them, and whatever's left behind, that's it. But for Brahma Baba, he left everything for everyone that was present to share it with the world. And instruments like Sister Jayanti and Daddy Janki that Sister Jayanti had mentioned, who was the administrative head of the Brahmakumaris, and she passed away, I think it's been about 2 years now. These have been spiritual silent giants that have made incredible ripples in the world. And here we are with this giant of a pandemic, which was just not ending. And it's had a devastating effect on the world, where people are really struggling with the idea of their economy, their food insecurity has become a big thing. Homelessness, political instabilities at the all-time high. Countries like Kazakhstan and in so many places, there's so much fear, Sister Jayanti. There's so much fear and selfishness. What are your thoughts about all of this? And what do you see as the underlying cause of the crisis that the world is facing today?
I do feel that what I shared at the beginning about the loss of connecting with our own values is what has caused this erosion in society. And so I'm seeing how the pandemic has been fueled. I'm using the word very consciously because I do see that it's, the whole situation with money and fossil fuels and all of these things, and forgetting who we are and just becoming hooked into external things is actually the cause of the pandemic. We've forgotten about respect for life. We've forgotten about the wilderness and giving space to other forms of life. We've tried to take over absolutely every inch of the planet and dominate and terrorize every other species. And so I think that nature has a way of surviving whether we're around or not. And so the pandemic has been one of nature's survival mechanisms, because we've really eroded that area which was urban life, rural life, and then wildlife. And so we've taken away all those boundaries and expected everything just to become our place, our home. So I think that that materialistic attitude and that aggressiveness is what has caused the pandemic. And I think it's important that we understand that that happened because we just got focused on the world out there instead of the world inside, in which we could stay in touch with our own truth, goodness, love. And so when the pandemic did come and there was lockdown everywhere, and again, some countries have again imposed quite severe lockdowns, but when it happened 2 years ago, 2020 March, at that time, it was really as if humans were locked into their apartments or homes and the animals took over the cities. You must have seen videos of that, where in the major cities of the world, you had animals roaming around. But today, again, with changes that have happened, again, the pandemic just seems to be evolving and new variants keep coming up. We haven't learned the lessons we need to learn. That's pretty clear. And so what's the future? The future is definitely that we have to learn the lesson that we have to have a return to our own inner core values. And the fascinating thing is that our core values are actually the same. You can talk about many different values in many different ways, but if you come down to the essence of all of those values, what you'll find is that the core values are peace, love, truth, purity, and joy. These are the essential qualities that we need to connect with within ourselves. We have those, everyone has those, but we need that attention and awareness to be able to allow what has become deeply hidden to again emerge. And that happens through prayer, contemplation, meditation, that we emerge these qualities and use them in our lives. And when we start using these, then the whole principle of nonviolence, no harm to any other creature, no harm to other human beings, no harm to nature and the environment, when we start actually practicing these things using our inner core values, then I think you'll see that state in which the ascending energy rises very fast.
This is why I think that voices like yours and voices like the Brahma Kumaris and some other organizations that are doing really good work in the world by inviting people to turn inwards and check something that Jayanti told you from the beginning, to be able to check your conscience and see if it's connected to those core values. What you're thinking, saying, and doing, does it connect to the love, the peace, the truth, the joy, and so on? And it seems a lot nowadays, Sister Jayanti, that truth is the name of the game. And, people are struggling, Sister, to be truthful, even with their loved ones in their own homes. What is the reason for a soul not having I don't know if it's tenacity or courage or just character of just being truthful first with the self and truthful with God, that they can be truthful with each other?
We don't give time to ourselves, as you said in the beginning. We don't make time to spend with the self to be able to really understand what are my motives. Are my motives clean? Or is there something that's selfish and greedy that's in there that's discoloring everything that I'm thinking and doing? So to make time for the self, that's absolutely vital. And maybe the pandemic created spaces of time that maybe otherwise we wouldn't have had. I know it's true for some people, but also I know that some people worked extra hard during the pandemic. Housewives were not just doing the work at home, they were doing the work that they would do in an office or in another establishment. Plus, they had to become home teachers for their kids. So they were actually doing 3 jobs instead of 1. But I'm thinking about how when you make time for yourself, then you begin to see what your motives are. Are they clean? And if not, can I clean them out? Because what is it that I really want? The treasures that I want are actually inside. They're not out there. But if I can tap into those inner treasures, then as I express them outside, I'm able to share them with everyone. So that's gone missing. And if I don't know myself, how am I going to be able to understand who is the divine, the source? God seems to have taken a backseat within our whole situation in the world. But an interesting thing, one of the words that people were Googling and were trying to find out more about was the word God. So a little sign of hope, a little ray of light. But if I don't know myself and I'm not willing to give time to know myself, my consciousness is caught up in mundane things. There's no space for God to be part of my life. But when I clear that space, then I can begin to tune into that awareness and the presence of the divine and start making a connection. And so let me at least start doing that so that then I can think about the next step of being honest with God. But as yet, I'm not even honest with myself. I don't really know what my motives and intentions are, and I need to know. And the thing with lack of honesty with human beings is lack of trust. I don't trust people any longer. Maybe I've had bad experiences, I've been deceived, or maybe I feel insecure, and I think that insecurity is the cause of the fear that you mentioned earlier. There's so much fear, but it actually stems from my own inner insecurity. There was also another very interesting thing that I understood just recently. It was an analysis of the social situation that actually then led to the pandemic taking on this very, very fearsome form that it has. And they were talking about the state of social isolation that people were experiencing prior to the pandemic. And it meant that it's not that they were alone, maybe they were alone, but maybe they were even at work with other people, maybe they were at home with other people, but they couldn't trust them, they couldn't come close to them. And so internally, there was an isolation. Secondly, they found no meaning in the work that they were doing. And if you look at the stats, then you'll see that so many people, either during or after the pandemic, well, it's still ongoing, but in recent times, we heard that so many people have left their jobs. Some couldn't keep their jobs, but many left their jobs because of lack of stimulation or lack of meaning in their job. The third reason, everybody's in a state of anxiety, and maybe there's nothing to be anxious about. And then when the pandemic happened, that became the focal point. It was now easier to name it and say, I'm anxious because of this, whereas before it was amorphous and people were anxious but didn't have a focus for their anxiety. So the pandemic provided a focus. And the fourth thing, the third thing that anxiety, fourth, yes, I'm to the
fourth.
Yeah. So the fourth thing, stress. Everybody's stressed out, too busy, too many things of distraction. And so when the pandemic came, it was the right moment for everybody to be caught up in that insecurity and fear. But in terms of human relationships, absolute no trust. Trust is broken down.
So looking at that as the reality, and perhaps one of the major causes for the fear that's so rampant in 7.5 billion of us across the globe, I want to go back to something you shared about God and how it was one of the most Googled words on Google. When we talk about that energy, and some people tend to don't want to put a word to it, energy, light, universe, it's God, it's Baba, just take it, right? But when we talk about the energy of God, can you share with us the benefits of not only establishing a connection with God, with Allah, Jehovah, Bhagwan, Khuda, the divine, but also establishing a relationship after the connection? Could you take us through the connection and then a few steps that could help us to develop a relationship? Because it's easy to break a connection, but it's not always easy to break a relationship. So if we're in a relationship with God, with Baba, then no matter what we go through, we're going to turn to this energy to support us or to guide us. And one of the things that I've observed, and please, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I've noticed even for myself, in my earlier days when I was much younger, I actually had a fear for God. So I've even found that if I'm afraid of a person, I stay away from them. So I just couldn't connect with that. And it wasn't until I came into the Brahma Kumaris and I started to understand the energy and the interpretation of God clearer, then I was able to not only connect, but to keep Baba with me as my best friend in everything that I do. Could you share, Sister Jayanti, how to make the connection, one? Secondly, what are some of the steps to create a relationship with the divine?
I mentioned how it's important to know the self. And if I put it a bit differently, when I think of myself as the physical form, this body, and my identity is locked up in this, I'm absolutely in a little box and I can't think or experience anything out of that box. Everything is connected with the physical and I'm locked into that physical domain. When I come to the awareness of who I truly am as that inner being, a being of light located here in the center of the forehead, in this awareness of who I truly am, that light, the more I stay in this awareness of the truth of my eternal identity, the easier it is then to feel the presence of God. And there's an image behind me, which is of this little point. It's a big image, but just go deeper and deeper into that center point. And that infinitesimal dot, that point of light, is the image of the soul, but it's also the image of the Supreme Soul, God, and all the other names that we heard earlier. In soul consciousness, forgetting this body, then I connect with the Supreme Being, the Source. And it's only through soul consciousness, stripping away this, that I can make that connection. Think about the experiments you did as a 12-year-old in science laboratories at school. And what you had to do was, if you were trying to make the electrical circuit work, the rubber casing on the wire had to be peeled off. You had to use a scalpel and peel away that rubber insulation, and then the wire could connect with the source of power, the source of electricity, and you got the circuit and the energy is flowing. So this is like the shell, the case. And while I'm locked into this, I can't connect with the divine. But stepping away from this, coming to the awareness of my spiritual identity, the soul, then I can feel the presence of the divine and make that connection and feel the love and the power and the peace reaching me, coming through to me. But yes, you're very right. It's not just a connection, it's a relationship. And a very lovely relationship is to think of God as my mother. And it's not it's not an aspect that's being understood very much in the West. But in fact, that awareness of God as the mother is very, very beautiful. It's the experience of unconditional love. And so when I think of my eternal mother, the mother who gave birth to this body is a human being, but the soul is connected with the Supreme, the Divine. And the Supreme Mother absolutely offers unconditional love, non-judgmental love. And it doesn't matter whether I've rejected God or I've searched for God or I haven't searched for God. None of those things matter. The love of the mother is consistent and constant and eternal. And so I begin to experience that love, and the bond is absolutely eternal. And that discovery means that I'm never going to be able to forget this connection. Now it's a relationship with my mother. Another aspect, I think about God as the Father, but not a father who wields a rod. No, that image of God as the one I need to fear is absolutely wrong. It is, as you say, taken so many people far away from the divine. But God is truth, God is love, love is God. And so God truly is the loving mother, but also the warm, compassionate Father who wants to give me everything that he has and keep nothing for himself. God's love is for the child. God's treasure store of happiness is for the child. God's storehouse of peace is for the child. Everything I want, everything I need is available from this one supreme being. And so experimenting with the relationship with parent, the father, is a very beautiful experience again, because the father has property, the father has an inheritance, and he just gives it to the child. But yes, in relationship with my parent, mother, and father, I have to learn about obedience. So there are spiritual laws that my parents teach me. And when I understand those spiritual laws and I begin to follow them, my parents are pleased with me, and everything that I receive from them multiplies, and it comes to me as blessings from them. You know, in olden days, when a child would, or even a young adult, would leave home to go somewhere, they'd pop in and say goodbye to their mum and dad, even if it was just, bye mum, see you tonight, or whatever it was. Wouldn't necessarily be a long thing, but there would be that connection. And it would be like making sure that they were going to stay safe and protected, and they'd carry that blessing with themselves when they moved out. And so that connection of love and responsibility, accountability, and being obedient to God is something that brings blessings from God.
Yeah.
So yes, there's everything that one needs available from one.
Mhm. It's so powerful, no? I mean, it's one shop to get everything that we're searching for, and we're going shopping in a million shops and still coming out with not much, you know? I always give the example of a dollar store, no pun intended to the dollar shoppers, but what's in a dollar store versus what's in Tiffany's. And it's just a whole different idea, different quality of life. And I've often wondered, what is it that pushes us away from the embrace of deepening that intimacy between the soul and the divine? Nowadays, with the synagogues, the churches, and so many religious places closing down, in America, approximately 30 churches close down every month. And that was pre-pandemic, before the pandemic actually took place. And, you know, Sister Jayanti, one of the things that I've loved the most about our spiritual community is that it doesn't squeeze God into a religion. It actually offers God in a way that each person can take as much as they can after they've understood the interpretation of the divine. And as we look at the fact that everyone's on a little bit of sensitivities, I mean, everyone's moving in a very sensitive or delicate manner. Places are closing. The Brahma Kumaris has done tremendously well as a result of the pandemic. And I have heard, and even for ourselves here, things just continued. Things never closed apart from having all the students and family come over in the numbers that we're used to. But it has continued. What do you think is at the basis of the community thriving so much despite what's going on in the world?
I'll share a few thoughts.
Mm.
Firstly, I think it's because there's a practical experience being offered. People are very tired of theory. They want to have the practical experience. And so when I first even understood that first lesson of the soul, it was such an amazing experience walking home back to my grandmother's place where I was staying when I was in India that time, in Pune. And I got home, and normally that walk would take 15 minutes or so. And I couldn't remember having walked. I must have passed those various shops and, those tradespeople and everything to get back to my home. But I couldn't remember any of that. It was like I'd been lifted and carried. And it was simply because that concept of soul was absolutely fixed, and I was feeling it. I, the soul, and the shining light. And the shining light was walking and didn't see anything around, and got home and said, well, how did I get here? I must have flown. So experience comes very, very quickly. And this is what gives people faith and confidence that, yes, it's a path worth following, not just the experience of soul, but the experience of God. So that's been a very, very powerful thing, I think, for many people. The second is that you get answers. You're never told, oh, this is too stupid, we're not going to tell you anything. There's always an answer for every single question, because it's not superstition, it's not magic, it's not mystery. It's very, very clear understanding of all the different concepts of spirituality. And so in a world in which people are very reluctant to give you answers and tell you exactly what is what, Brahma Kumaris have very clear answers for everything. So I think that's the second reason. And the third reason, and I don't mind talking about it, sometimes people get a bit shy about talking about money. But let me put it like this. The founder, Brahma Baba, would always say that spirituality is like the light of the sun. It's available for all, and it's available freely for all. And so sharing spiritual knowledge is the same. it is available for all and it is free for all. And so I think that people also have begun to recognize that if there's a big fat price tag on something which is spiritual, they pause, they ask the question, but how come? And when they come to us, yes, of course, if they want to contribute on a voluntary basis for all our activities, whatever it is they've enjoyed and they want that work to continue, that's their choice. But there's no price tag on anything at all. Everything is offered absolutely free. And it's something that people are curious about at first. And they begin to understand how the law of karma begins to work. That if I've received something that I find useful and valuable, I'm going to want to give something back and contribute, whether it's in cash, in kind, or in service. Some people give their time, their talents, their gifts. Sometimes it's something in kind. They've been growing vegetables in their vegetable patch and they bring along a few potatoes or a few tomatoes, whatever it may be. So that spirit of having received, that faith of knowing that, of course, they're going to want to support something that has benefited them. So I think these three factors are the factors that would make people feel that, yes, this is something worth exploring.
I was remembering when you were in California a few years ago, and our wonderful brother and close friend, Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith, you were on his stage at Agape, and I think he had asked you a question about how in the world do you all not charge or ask for money? I don't know if you remember, and you gave such a great answer, because he was saying he just cannot understand how he would be able to run his spiritual community without asking for money. And basically, I think because of the experience that the students and the members attain through the study, it is a natural energy that emerges from a very pure place in the soul. I want to give. I want to help. You know, we've just moved into a new place within 8 months during a pandemic. And I know you say there's not magic going on, but I'll tell you, it was like magic. And the fact that we've moved in and we raised the money that we had gotten for the property, I just turned to Baba, Sister Jayanti, and everyone. And I just said, yes. You know, this is God's love. I mean, this is the purity of our hearts. We've worked so hard. Okay, I guess things just had to change. And this is how we ended up here. You know, you and I could talk for ions and we could go on. And I love so much of everything that you're saying. And I think now would be a great opportunity for those to leave their remarks or comments in the comment box. What are you feeling as a result of Sister Jayanti sharing on our time together? And we are not going to be able to go for any questions at this time, which we apologize for. But please just leave your comment. How are you feeling? What did you get from our time together? Are you excited about the rest of 2022 as a result of starting it off on this kind of note? Sister Jayanti, as we move into the close of our wonderful time together, is there any closing remarks that you'd like to share with us? And then after that, could you take us into a meditation, please, so we can feel what you felt at 19 when you met Brahma Baba, and Brahma Baba just spoke to you and made you have that connection to the Supreme, and you just go, okay, that's it, I'm ready.
Okay, your question first. If there's something that I would like to suggest to each one, make time for yourself. Give yourself, it's not the luxury, it's a necessity. It's absolutely a necessity to make time to be able to go into your own inner world and see what's going on. Because when I meet myself, then there's a huge, huge treasure store that opens up. And so I think it would be so valuable to start this new year with this new experience. Give yourself this very special gift of getting to know who you truly are. And yes, let's have a few minutes. Let me go inside and watch my thoughts and the speed of my thoughts slows down. And I pick up on one thought, the thought of peace. And I hold peace in my mind. And as I feel peace within my being, I realize this is who I truly am. And in this awareness of peace and the being of light, the soul, I connect with the Supreme, the Divine. And from the Supreme come rays of love and light. And these not only reach me, but they reach out into the world. And others also benefit from these rays. As I come back into the awareness of the physical domain, I hold this awareness of the inner being that I am and remind myself, I am peace, I am light. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Jenna. Thank you to Geeta Ben. Thank you to Nilesh Pai for stepping in at the last minute. Thank you to all.
Thank you so much, Sister Jayanti. That was beautiful. Sorry, Nilesh, but I just wanted to let everyone know. I hope that you've taken a lot from today's time together. And as I had mentioned earlier, please leave your thoughts in the comments field so that we can read through them and feel your heart as well in terms of what this hour meant to you. And all of the activities that are going on are sponsored by the volunteers of the Brahma Kumaris. So to everybody who has been behind putting this together, wholehearted appreciation and big thank you. Nilesh Bhai, again, I'm hanging it over to you. Thank you for having me and lots of good wishes for the year and beyond.
Thank you very much. This is Bhavan, and Nehal Bhai jumped in for me. I got stuck at work today, so I just caught it 5 minutes in, so I was just asked to close up. No, I echo all the words both you, Diamonds and Angels, have said. It was very awakening, and I've noticed the same thing. People who I've talked to, whichever walk of life, with a background, they feel there's a change coming. This conference we're talking about. And I think the connection of our self to the inner being and outwards to Baba is the way ahead. And I think that is what people are appreciating, looking for a bigger answer. So I think it's a great start for people who are just coming into hearing about us and seeking some truth and some way ahead. This is a great, great start. There's some wonderful questions, and a shame we couldn't answer them all, but we've said to connect with your local center, your local teacher, and they'll be more than happy to share that. And like Sister Jenna said on the website, there's some lots of great resources as well. I've posted on the chat next month's talk. It's from Eric Lares from Canada, great speaker. Again, talking about relationships, my greatest teacher. and how that affects our mind and thinking. So do look in the chat and you can pick up that flyer there. Also on today's flyer, there's a mailing list email which you can sign up for and join up. But when you do get a reply, do respond to it so we can let you know about such wonderful talks like tonight as well. So that'll be on this month's flyer and next month's flyer. So do look out for that. I'm just going to wish everybody a wonderful 2020. Stay strong, stay positive. It's all in our minds. So let's stay there. Explore inner space, not outer space, and we'll all be fine. So thank you, Sister Jayanti, for sharing such wonderful treasures with us tonight. Thank you, Sister Jenna, from across the waters, helping us out tonight. Wishing you both a wonderful 2020, and thank you. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.